I've currently got 2 other videos on the go. I expected both of them to clock in at under a half hour apiece, and I also figured I'd be able to get at least one of them out today. But in typical dev fashion, the one closer to completion is nearly 2 hours long, while the other one is nearing an hour. Whoops, mission creep is a real thing, guys. Though maybe it's scope creep this time? Whatever. So, I'm going to take a short break from working on those topics to work on this one instead. Have you guys seen the "Everyone is 12" meme? On September 7th, 2025, this Blue Sky post went viral. I'm working on a new unified theory of American reality. I'm calling it "Everyone is 12 now." I'm strong, and I want to have like 50 kids and a farm. Of course you do, you're 12. I don't want to eat vegetables. I think steak and french fries is the only meal. Hell yeah, homie, you're 12. Maybe if there's crime, we should just send the army. Bless your heart, my 12-year-old buddy. This post is clearly alluding to 3 common right-wing or tradcon points of view. The desire to move out of the progressive hive known as a metropolitan area, and live an idealized version of the more pastoral, off-the-grid lifestyle. The increasing adoption of alternative diets, generally all carnivore, among those right-wingers who distrust anything from the mainstream, including dietary advice. And the belief that crime problems are solely a result of lax law enforcement, and simply cracking down harder will solve the problem. What unites each of these beliefs is that there's usually a drop of truth in each of them, but nonetheless, they're overwhelmingly too simplistic to ever actually work in reality. For example, the first one is phrased from a man's point of view, and yes, there are tons of guys on the right who would love this life, but the most high-profile expression of this position are actually from women who aspire to be tradwives, who actively desire to be a stay-at-home mom. I've talked about that in a previous video, and back then I pointed out that the whole tradwife thing is almost always just an aesthetic, and not how these people actually live. In fact, the center of the drama from that video, Sarah Stock, it just came out recently that she's actually been sneaking out behind her new husband's back to fuck her boss, Elijah Schaefer, who is also married. Whoopsie! The second example reminds me of Jordan Peterson's increasingly bizarre dietary habits during his post-benzo arc. He made a big deal about how going meat only cured basically everything in his life, with everyone else being extremely skeptical. Nonetheless, adoption of the carnivore diet has only increased over time, usually with people coming to that position due to their more generalized anti-institution beliefs. If the mainstream says something's bad, then it must be good, because the mainstream is corrupt, that sort of thing. As for the third example, while there are absolutely some soft-on-crime policies coming out of the left which I do not like for example that one bill in Virginia, which, among many other things, is removing the minimum mandatory sentences for a whole bunch of offenses that I think people should be locked up for. The other extreme, being extremely tough on crime, can also be bad too. The real solution to a crime wave is not to simply send in the fucking army. Crime is actually a complicated problem, with multiple variables, and law enforcement is only one of those variables. Sometimes you do actually just need more policing, but not all the time. Plus, the army isn't a police force. There's the constitutional issue of using a military force for domestic policing, there's training issues, there's a whole bunch of stuff. The recent ICE shit show in Minnesota is pretty solid proof that treating crime-related issues like there's just one knob that reads force and cranking that shit up as high as you can often causes more problems than it solves. What this post is basically saying is that these 3 positions seem reasonable on the surface, especially if you're a child. However, once you grow up and are actually able to process complex thoughts, you will very easily see how these are too simplistic to actually work. The idea behind "Everyone is 12 now," and let's be honest, this guy mainly means right-wingers, is that their brains have never actually matured into a state where they can see why their dumb ideas are bad. Even if they're adults, mentally they're stunted at 12 years old. It should be pretty easy to figure out why this became a meme. It intuitively makes sense, and it's funny, and those are the only ingredients you need for a meme to be successful. Remember from my video on memes, truth isn't actually necessary for something to go viral. It helps, but it's not required. I guess the question is the "Everyone is 12" meme actually true? Does it accurately reflect reality, or are people just going along with it for the lulz? Well, to start off with, obviously the entire right wing doesn't literally have their brain stunted at 12. Like if you brain scanned them, they wouldn't have 12-year-old brains in their head on any physical level. The actual question here is, do right-wingers generally think in an immature manner, in a way that an adult would recognize as being 12 years old like? Are there examples of this happening? Well, back in October, Kash Patel announced, in order to incentivize his FBI agents, he was going to be awarding them challenge coins if they performed above expectations. These are, they're made to look like the Punisher symbol. They've got Kash Patel's personal logo on them. Yeah, this just looks like merch. Or something a kid might find cool. A 12-year-old maybe. When this news went viral, people were flooding underneath the image with "Everyone is 12" posts. Also in October, the Department of War Rapid Response official Twitter account dropped a video titled, all caps, "Your Secretary of War," showing Pete Hegseth flying a fighter. And the viral response to it was, "You want to do a ride-along in the backseat of a big plane and cosplay being a pilot? Of course you do, you're 12! A look into the XAI office today on Grokpedia release day. It's early morning, and the engineers are still in their tents. A good night's sleep will do wonders. Of course you want to sleep in a tent inside, you're 12! Forget Doge, forget the debt. Put Elon Musk in charge of a $10 trillion program to reindustrialize America at lightning speed and crush every competitor into the fucking dust. Of course you think that. You're 12. Oh my god, it's Lilith! Onions, lettuce, tomatoes, pickles instantly ruin a burger. Goo goo gaga, I hate eating my vegetables. Of course you do, you're 12. From the official Homeland Security account, the enemies are at the gates. Defend your hearth and home. You want to dress up like a knight and play swords? Of course you do, you're 12. America is worth fighting for, with a Coca-Cola and a red pickup truck. You want to drive in a big red car and drink soda? Of course you do, you're 12. That last one is actually really funny, because the guy who posted it ratioed the government so fucking hard that after his You're 12 post aimed at the government about modern art went giga viral, Stephen Miller actually hopped on Fox News like an hour later to complain about leftists and modern art defacing America.
The scandal is how Democrats and the left have scarred the landscape of our country with grotesque so-called modern art that celebrates ugliness, that celebrates defacement.
Okay, there is no direct proof that Miller was so fucking triggered over Twitter ratios that he called up Fox to make these comments, but the timing of them was perfect. I'm choosing to believe it. So, as always, I don't usually make a video solely to laugh at a funny meme. There's often something else underneath to actually explore. And this time is no different. Do you guys remember, like, back in the lead up to the 2016 election, there was this trend among progressive Twitter users to talk about how they're obviously way too young child, like 3 or 4 years old, said to them during breakfast or whatever that they were scared if Trump became president, or they were scared for illegal immigrants, or they were scared of losing their right to choose, all that nonsense. It's been so long that I can't find examples of it anymore. I really wanted to put them in the video, but I do vividly recall seeing them many times. The rest of the internet reacted with extreme incredulity. Like, yes, of course, your tiny child is giving coherent political takes. That's a real fucking thing that happened. This idea is still memed on modern Twitter, even though it's 10 years old, because it's just that fucking stupid. There's this tendency of leftists to really lean heavily into the from the mouth of babes idea, the assumption that young, inexperienced children can unexpectedly utter profound wisdom, truth, or insight because they can still see the world plainly for what it is, without the blinders that culture or adulthood place on them. It's actually originally a religious idea. Out of the mouth of babies and infants, you have established strength because of your foes, to still the enemy in the avenger, meaning that God not only listens to infants, he uses them as his vessel to speak truths and accomplish triumphs. Which is quite funny, considering that a lot of leftists are not religious. Nonetheless, there's this feeling that the innocent child, uncorrupted by the patriarchy or capitalism or whatever, can accurately see the problems with the system. In fact, Greta Thunberg's rise to prominence was based entirely on that vibe. The problem is, of course, it's completely false. Thunberg's parents were also left-wing activists, and raised her in that tradition. Children are not these uncorrupted angels speaking truth to power. A lot of the time, they just end up saying what their parents want them to say. We can see this best when the politics are reversed. Whenever there's a right-wing child speaking truths, like that Sofa girl from a few years back who made edgy far-right political videos. Or it's Kyle Rittenhouse, who everyone forgets is the same age as Greta Thunberg, like down to the fucking day. Or it's that one anti-Greta activist from Germany that everyone's forgotten about. Suddenly, it's not from the mouths of babes. Instead, it's the alt-right pipeline, or the red pill radicalizing the youth of today. None of this stuff is actually rooted in any real analysis of why these kids are saying these things. It's all just vibes-based. What's important here is that, very generally speaking, the broader left, as adults during the late 2010s, would occasionally go viral for holding up the opinions of children as if we should take them seriously, and not, ignore them because they're children, and what the fuck do they know about anything complicated? We might have a reasonable expectation of the left-leaning adults to understand complex topics because they are adults, but instead we ended up engaging with the opinions of their children on social media, almost like the adults were hiding behind them. It's pretty sneaky. After all, if the kids end up being wrong on anything, who cares? They're just kids. Why are you going so hard on them? But now it's 2026, and the right wing has just cut out the fucking middleman. Again, very generally speaking, the broader right is also holding up the opinions of children as if we should take them seriously. But those opinions aren't coming out of children this time. They're not even coming out of make-believe children. Like, they're not even bothering to fake the whole, my 4-year-old just walked in and said this shit. Nope. They're just giving the child's opinions themselves as adults. I can't believe it. The right actually managed to one-up the left's retardation on this one. A lot of this will be tied to nostalgia. Your life, on some level, was better when you were 10 or 12, because you didn't have real-life shit to worry about. No job, no paying the bills, no trying to get into a real relationship, or trying to start a family of your own. Instead, you're daydreaming during school, or ditching it entirely. You're with the bros, riding around town on your bikes, or playing video games. The eternal summer afternoon. I did a video on this a few years back. There's this idea from very far-left anarchist circles that nostalgia is fascism. It's kind of a stupid idea. While political movements can and do weaponize nostalgic feelings to motivate their supporters into action. You know what I mean. The world used to be great, and the enemy took that away from you, and now you must fight to reclaim it. 1, that's not exclusive to fascist movements. And 2, that doesn't mean that nostalgia itself is fascist, only that nostalgia can be a powerful propaganda tool. There is absolutely a tendency for people who fail to grow up on their own terms to feel as if their childhood has been stolen from them, which means that someone must have done the stealing, which means there's a villain to fight, even though in reality, there almost never actually is one. I say grow up on your own terms, because once again, there's a golden mean here. I think that's just the theme of my channel, the golden mean. There's the person who grows up, but not on his own terms, who is hostile and resentful in his own adult state. This is the person who put away all of his childish things, because his society told him he should. He doesn't enjoy anything about his life anymore. If you've ever seen someone say that it's childish to play games after you've turned 18, even if your life is otherwise in order, and you're just enjoying your downtime, yeah, the person who genuinely believes this is likely in this camp. And then on the other extreme is the person who never grows up, never takes responsibility, never broadens his horizons, only does the same thing he used to do and nothing else. Not because he lacks money or time, but because he's never grown. The Peter Pan man-child who thinks that his life will last forever, until it suddenly doesn't. The golden mean between these two extremes is the person who still enjoys the childish fun things in life, but is also self-actualized enough to actually have his shit together and can be serious when necessary. Funnily enough, the two ends of this spectrum also end up overlapping a lot more with each other than the middle position. The outwardly bitter adult may also actually end up being a Peter Pan man-child in private, if the cards come out right, or I guess wrong in this case. This is because the problem they both face is the same one: lack of self-actualization. I bring all of this up specifically to add context to the final fact that wraps this drama up with a nice little bow. The everyone is 12 meme does actually seem to be at least somewhat true, and by the right's own admission. Here is a now lost Twitter post from 2021. Everything you thought was cool when you were 12 is what's actually cool. Arnold, war, metal, huge boobs, all of it. We've come full circle. The left is saying the right acts like they're 12, and the right is saying, yes, we do. And you know what? Fair enough. I like Arnold movies. I like metal. I like huge boobs. I don't like war, but I like stories about war. That thrill you get when you watch a movie or read a book and you get whisked away on an adventure, yes, that is childish in some ways. But also, in some ways, that's what life's all about. The problem, ultimately, is the inability to put the childish things away when necessary and deal with the adult problems properly. That is what the everyone is 12 meme is getting at. Like, for example, I'm no lover of Maduro, but I'm pretty sure this statement by Hegseth only goes hard if you're 12.
Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance. Until they didn't, and until he didn't. He effed around, and he found out.
Seriously, this is how middle school boys imagine running a country one day. Everything I thought was cool when I was 12 might be a true statement, but I would still not allow the vibe of what I thought was cool when I was 12 govern over the real world adult situations that I have to deal with, if that makes sense. Anyway, as much as I love a good your mom joke, the lack of sincerity from the Trump administration, when there's real events happening right now and real questions to be answered, is one reason why people are turning away from the right. It's not the only reason. In fact, there are like 10,000 reasons right now. But the everyone is 12 meme has accurately described one big one. I didn't believe that Greta Thunberg was worthy of listening to, let alone believing she was fit to lead a political movement. So why would I believe that a right-wing version of her, transplanted into a man's body, would be any better?